you. So my name's Hannah, and I'm an IBCLC lactation consultant. So my credential is in supporting families with feeding their babies, no matter what style of feeding they're doing, either by choice or necessity. I can help families with all sorts of feeding, with the goal being that families are able to feed their babies in the way that they want to, that they're choosing to. I offer support. I work privately, and I offer support in a number of ways. So I can support families locally with home visits, and I also facilitate 2 weekly groups where families can come along for more general feeding support, get baby weighed, speak to other families with babies, that sort of thing. But I also offer online and phone consultations for families who are further afield, which means that I can take my support all over the world, which is, it's yeah, I love being able to do what I do. It's completely inspired by my own experiences of feeding my babies and the difficulties I had, and recognizing why good quality evidence-based feeding support is just so important to help families be able to make the decisions they want to make with the evidence and information that they need to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Hannah, for being part of doing this, because I really wanted, if we were offering support, that it would be with a lactation consultant and a local one. So people recognise your face, they know who you are before they contact you. And that's really important for neurodivergent people. I mean, some neurodivergent people might have face blindness, but they've actually heard your voice, they know to contact you, and they know you are a lactation consultant. So you have that specialism to help really well, and in a really personalised way.
Yeah, I hope so. I think, can I just add one thing before we get to your intro? I think one of the the things that I love most about working privately is that I am able to give families time, and I will always make time to be able to give that individualised care that is so important for everybody, not least for somebody whose brain works a little bit differently. I'm there to meet that need exactly where they are, work out what that family needs and wants it from that consultation together, and implement that for them.
That's brilliant. That's that personalised care is so important, like you say, for everybody.
Yes.
And for those who might find processing information need it in a different way, yeah, that personalised approach can help with that processing of information in a way that's accessible to,
yeah,
which is
yeah,
really, really good.
Yeah.
And hi everyone, yeah. I'm Aileen. My Birth Support CIC is all about supporting your mental health as parents, and we know there's lots of support out there for caring for the little ones, and the government and the family centres and the hubs and things, their groups often prioritise the relationship between you and your child and groups for your child. And our organisation, we really focus on you as a parent, because if we can help you feel more confident, more comfortable in your own skin, more able to relax and become the parent you're going to be, then you're better able to look after your child, or more likely to. And I identify as neurodivergent, and my daughter's diagnosed as neurodivergent. And I recognise that there are lots of different kind of ways that shows up in different families and different people. So although we're doing a live today that's about half an hour long, and we can't cover every different type of neurodivergent need, we're hoping that we will touch on some that resonate with you. And we invite you to take what's helpful from this and leave the rest, and to follow up with us if there were questions you have that we haven't quite met.
Absolutely.
In terms of my support, I offer, we have a group that's in Spring Lane in Canterbury every Tuesday in term time, that we keep small on purpose so that people who feel vulnerable or who are neurodivergent or disabled can come to. And it will be very different experience than going to a big toddler group. And that's completely free. You just pop in, you don't have to book. You can come any time between 9:30 and 11:15. And then we also do an online group, Maternal Journal Online, and that's once a month. And again, that's accessible if getting out of the house is an issue, or coming out in the day, or being with too many people in one go feels too much. So they're there kind of as our standard offer, but we also offer one-to-ones as well, whether it's birth trauma recovery or antenatal support, or just support because you're feeling anxious or finding it tricky as a parent. And we offer that support one-to-one as well, or as a couple, if there's a couple of you as a family group that would like support together.
Okay.
So, Hannah, we've done
Yes.
intros, we've said who's funded this. I've got some questions. Questions that the kind of thing parents might ask quite frequently based on what we've talked about before when we were planning this,
Yes.
and questions that I've heard parents ask as well.
Mhm.
And when I had my kids, I got a lot of infant feeding support from a group that now I look back was full of neurodivergent people. We hadn't, it was 15 years ago, so we hadn't been diagnosed yet. But one by one, nearly all of us or our children have been diagnosed since. And it's like, okay, the penny drops, which is quite a common experience for people who are late diagnosed. But there are some common things that tend to come up. And I thought we'd look at some questions kind of one by one that kind of pick up on these. So first question,
Yes.
I need help. I want to get this right. My friends are so much more go with the flow than I can cope with. Mm-hmm. And I want to get this feeding thing right. But I need step by step. I need routine.
Yeah.
But I need to get this right, most of all.
Yeah.
Can you help me?
Absolutely. I think, well, I hope so. I think, becoming a parent is it shakes everything, doesn't it? Right to our cores, everything gets shaken around, and then everything settles. And somewhere in the midst of that, you have to sort of pick yourself up and care for this little being who's completely reliant on you. And it's a huge pressure, it's a huge amount of responsibility, it's something that you've never done before, and you're just expected to kind of hit the ground running, and that's hard. I think we do a disservice when we don't acknowledge that there's multiple ways to parent. There isn't one way to parent. Mm-hmm. And I think that it comes down to your personality and how your brain works, but it also comes down to your child's personality. And so you can sometimes have a very structured parent trying to parent a very relaxed, go with the flow child, and we can have the opposite as well, and I think that can bring real challenges with it. So we can't say for sure that babies don't operate to a routine from the word go. In the very early days, everything is a bit of a free-for-all, and that can feel very scary and very overwhelming because we just don't know what's coming next. So preparing yourself with support around you and giving yourself that information about what those early days and weeks with a baby might look like can be helpful. But the difficult thing is we cannot prescribe that this is what it is going to look like. But what we do start to see as the days and weeks go by, perhaps, is a little bit of a rhythm. Okay. How things look. So I think if you are somebody who does struggle with anxiety, or you do have kind of OCD tendencies, that you kind of find real reliability in that structure, starting infant feeding can feel really challenging because it doesn't always come with that structure and that reliability. And so being able to kind of allow yourself to go with the flow and see that it's kind of learning your baby, learning these new rhythms, learning these new what's going to happen next. It's all a process. And I think what's really important is to recognize these early weeks of being a parent. It's not always going to feel like this.
Yeah, that's a relief.
Yes, isn't it?
Yeah. And I wonder, this desire that someone who's neurodivergent might have to have structure, but also need step by step, it can feel really overwhelming. So I wonder, are there some more concrete bottom lines that they could be looking for? More concrete, definite things that could at least mark the territory, or whatever better metaphor would be.
I think this is a really good example of where data around infant feeding can, for some people, be really helpful, but for other people can stress them out more. So things we might look for are that a baby's generally feeding somewhere between 8 and 12 times in 24 hours. Information like that can be helpful for some people, but for other people that can be really unnerving, and they can get so fixated on those numbers that they forget to actually look at the overall picture.
Sure.
So I think it's really tailoring the information that families are given as to how what their expectations of feeding are going to look like. But kind of the basic information we look for are things like the baby's going to feed 8 to 12 times. We can talk about nappy output, like what are we expecting to see in a baby's nappy to be reassured that they're getting enough. Because
Yes.
the other thing that might be unnerving for a family if they are choosing to go down the breastfeeding route is if breastfeeding is going well, we never know how much milk a baby is drinking, which can be quite a strange thing to get your head round. But because breasts aren't see-through and a baby's tummy isn't see-through, we never know the volumes of milk a baby's getting. We just know they're getting enough. And so supporting a family to be able to recognise that, we're ticking the boxes of what we'd expect to see, that things are looking like they're going in a reassuring way, can be really helpful and empowering.
Yeah. And we know they're getting enough because of the nappies.
Yes, exactly that. The nappy output gives us
That's
really good
helpful.
information that the baby's getting enough. The baby's kind of behaviour and kind of temperament, how feeding is feeling generally, these are all good reassuring signs that things are going well.
Yeah. And as a parent, if they need that step-by-step support, is that something as a lactation consultant, or in other bits of the country, lactation consultants can help with that?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think, it's all about recognising that, everybody needs care in a slightly different way. And so it's a real, privilege as a professional to be able to give families that opportunity to have that kind of step-by-step, if that's useful, that step-by-step guidance. But also recognising that for some people, step-by-step guidance actually is even more confusing. And so also supporting somebody to be able to be instinctual is useful too.
Yes, that makes sense. It's really helpful because the different things you're describing, someone might need this and someone might need this, actually helps the listeners to go, actually, I'm probably a bit more like this or probably a bit more like that. So it helps acknowledge both. And I've got a second question from a different person. So they've said, I'm ADHD and I need nursing to work because I can't organise things. So like almost the opposite thing. They can't step by step, they can't structure, and there's all the faff of bottles and sterilising types of powder, packing all the things I'd need for a day if I was bottle feeding. Help! I the executive functioning there just wouldn't be in place to be able to cope with all those things. So I wondered, what help is there if someone is ADHD and is trying to bottle feed but finds it hard to organise, or is like, I've got to get breastfeeding to work because I can't organise in my brain, it just doesn't time and work and structure like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I supported a mum last week who has ADHD, and she got in touch with me because she said, I just need breastfeeding to work. Like, I know I haven't got the capacity to feel that I've got to, making up bottles, sterilising the bottles, all that kind of stuff feels too intimidating, too overwhelming. I need breastfeeding to work because I think the flexibility of knowing that it's always going to be there and it's one less thing for me to have to worry about is actually quite it feels the right option for me. And we talked about, so she's got a very new baby, and we talked about how the early weeks of getting breastfeeding established can it can feel quite intense. It can feel a lot to be taking on. It's a lot of information potentially to be taking on board, but reassuring her that actually once you've got breastfeeding established, so those after those first kind of 4-6 weeks ish point, once you've got your milk supply established, once you and baby have figured out what you're doing, lots of parents will say that breastfeeding suddenly becomes, I'm not going to say easy, but if it becomes easier. You're not having to kind of think about everything so much all the time because the milk's there, baby knows what's going on. If you go out for the day, the milk's going to be there. It doesn't matter if you kind of decide to stay at your friend's house longer because you haven't got the bottles, or that you've got it all there. It's all ready to go. And so this mum's actually doing really, really well with feeding, which is just so lovely to see. She's comfy, baby's doing beautifully, reassuring weight news. So yeah, it's all looking really positive.
Yeah. And if a mum is or a dad or parents are ADHD and they or just don't want, they do actually need to bottle feed.
Yes.
But there is all of this kit and structure and things, and they've got to remember. And are there any little tricks that that you've noticed people do that help them?
I think really keeping it as simple as you can. I think when it comes to anything baby, there are so many things on the market that are sold as being the product you're going to need, the products that's going to make your life easier, and that in itself is kind of overwhelming and is sort of slightly bombarding because you don't know what to buy or what you need or who to trust. I would say keep everything as stripped back as you possibly can, like keep it as streamlined as possible. Don't worry about any of the gadgets or gizmos that are sold as going to make life easier because, well, one, we're not sure about them, kind of if they are entirely safe for making up bottles and formula. But the simpler you can keep things, the easier it is going to be for you going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know whether it's helpful, but I know when we had R2, I got a changing bag that was always by the front door that had everything in it,
Yeah.
plus one that was being used.
Yes.
And I think what I would have done if I'd had I did have a dad involved, but if you have a partner or another mum or someone involved in your family, grandma, whoever it is, who would be able to help with the structure of that so that that's always repacked. If you know that organisationally that would be tricky for you, perhaps someone else in the family or a friend can help make sure that bag that's at the front door is always ready to go.
That's really nice.
You know, like those practical things. And I appreciate some people are single parents and they won't have someone else that can do it, but something like that might help for some people.
Yeah, absolutely. Or keeping like things in the car, like having another station of equipment.
That's a good idea. Yeah, so you know it's there in different places.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's nice, actually. Yeah. So my third question was from somebody who's further down the line in their feeding, and actually she's fed beyond babyhood, and her little one's actually 3 now, and she's had enough. She's had enough of feeding. And the reason why she's had enough of feeding is because for her it is sensory overwhelm. And I know this can happen with a newborn as well, that actually infant feeding of any type is a real sensory experience. There's the touch, there's the wetness, there's the feeling in your body, the change of the letdown. If you're using bottles, there's wetness, you're always having to wash things, sterilize things. There's all those different textures, smells, sounds. And as neurodivergent people, we can get really overwhelmed with that. So this mum actually really wants to stop because it's too much sensory now. She's touched out, she's had enough. But her child is autistic as well, or neurodivergent as well, and probably doesn't want to stop. And actually there's probably something about structure in there and connection and comfort that would make it hard. And she's asking, you know, what do I do about this? What do I do about the sensory if I am ready to wean now and I'm done?
Yeah. Well, I mean, how amazing to feed until 3. What an amazing thing to do. Firstly, I think if this mum came to me and said exactly that she was done, I think one of the first things I would ask about is how breastfeeding is fitting into their day and night. Like, what is the structure of what are the feeds looking like at the moment? Because that can be such a individual thing to, at 3, everybody's feeding, relationship is looking a bit different. How feeding is actually kind of playing out day to day and night to night is going to be different for everybody. But I think often it's about, with an older child, depending on their kind of understanding, often talking about it can be a really helpful way to start. There are some really lovely books and resources that I can recommend that kind of help you can start those conversations with your child. Potentially doing, if they've got any toys or objects that they really enjoy playing with, you can do some role play if that's possible. You kind of, depending where they're at. They can all be really nice ways to sort of start the conversation around stopping feeding and how that might look. In terms of kind of actual feeds, for some families, like, distraction can be really helpful. So kind of keeping the days busy so there's not those opportunities when mum sits down on the sofa and toddler's like, brilliant.
Yeah, that's the time.
So keeping the days, busy, and actually we're coming up to a really good season for that to be more possible because there's lots going on. You might be able to kind of distract with a quick trip to the park, those sort of things, which isn't so possible in the dark, in the winter when it's dark and cold and miserable and everyone's got to pile coats on. So there are definitely techniques that I can share with a family to kind of help weaning be an easier journey. At the same time, recognizing that actually it's not unusual that a child does need a lot of physicality from a parent, and stopping breastfeeding in itself isn't going to stop that need. So having conversations about how we can continue to meet that child's needs whilst recognizing that for mum there are moments where she is just touched out and overwhelmed, and kind of potentially helping with some strategies to cope with that, as well as identifying if there are any particular triggers where she finds that more difficult. Like, is it when she's tired? Is it towards the end of the day? Could it be linked with her cycle? We know that feeling of being touched out and nursing aversion actually kind of is often worse around times ovulation and first few days of your period. So is that playing into this as well? So yeah, really, again, tailoring that support to kind of work out what that individual dyad need.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember with my son, he fed to 3.5, and we ended up swapping sides. So he was still in a cot beside us, or it was like a toddler bed with 3 sides. And actually my husband slept next to him instead of me. So he still had the physicality, but couldn't smell the milk in quite the same way. And I remember in the group I was in when I first had my daughter, I remember one of the women talking about, they'd let their toddler or older child nurse while they sang a particular song.
Yes.
When the song was done, it was done.
Yes. Yeah. I
through the song.
Yeah. I was just about to say, actually, I remember a mum sticks in my mind who used that exact technique as well. That actually finding a song, and I think actually the song she used, the toddler really enjoyed the last line of the song, so he'd kind of like release and sing that last line with her, which was a nice technique as well.
That is nice. But I think it's lovely that you've picked up on how our children do still need physicality, and for some of them they will be sensory seeking. So they will want that proprioception on the end and the edges of their body. Touch. They need that feedback. So finding other ways to provide that will be important. And also for the parent and for the child, there may be that they need different rhythms and structures. They've got so used to the rhythm of night looking like this or day looking like this, and they might need that to be different as well. So that the predictability of rhythm and the connection of touch is still there in a different way. Yeah, that's absolutely lovely. Thank you. I've got 2 more questions, and one is I'm pregnant and feeding. And feeding has really become my special interest. I'm like deep dive rabbit holing down this feeding thing to try and get my head around it. But I'm getting really frustrated because so many people who talk about feeding don't really seem to know what they're talking about. You know, all this stuff I'm reading says X, Y, Z, and they don't seem to really know about it in quite the same way. And they just don't seem to have done their homework. They don't understand why. They also don't really understand why this is so important to me. They're like, you're pregnant, why are you making such a fuss about this now? But I'm enjoying this. I'm liking deep diving into this. This is helpful for me. But there's all these influencers and gurus and socials and all this information. And I guess what I'm wondering from you, Hannah, is how do I weigh up which of this is trustworthy and which isn't, when there are a lot of people teaching about it, but they don't necessarily really seem to know what they're talking about?
Yeah, it's a really valid point, and actually something I think it's one of the downsides of social media in any kind of subject, on any subject, isn't it? There is so much information out there, and sometimes it's hard to pick through the kind of the naff stuff and be able to pick actually what is the evidence-based trustworthy stuff. I think information overwhelm can be something that a lot of people feel when you get into kind of, when you go down the route of researching a new topic. But I would firstly say I think it's amazing that person is spending time while they're pregnant kind of researching feeding, because I think so often families that I will go and see, they've thought briefly about how feeding might look, but it's so abstract when you're expecting a baby that sometimes kind of actually thinking about how the caring for that baby is something that seems so far away that it's not always something that's thought about. So I think it's amazing that she's thinking about that, firstly. In terms of kind of being able to pick out reliable resources, I would always go back to who it's been created by. So my credentials, so IBCLC, which stands for International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, that is kind of the gold standard in kind of specialist feeding support. So anything that's been written or made by somebody with that credential should be trustworthy and evidence-based. Anything else, look for, as I say, look for who has written it. Things like breastfeeding counsellors are amazing, and again, highly trained and qualified specialist, very specialised in feeding support. So going for somebody who has got that kind of extra level in feeding information is you're onto a good bet in terms of being able to trust what they're producing.
Okay, so IBCLCs and breastfeeding counsellors, they're probably going to be safe. That's really helpful, because before you become a parent, you don't know about who would be the support network that's trustworthy, who is the next stage of it, and that are appropriately trained. So that's really good to know those in advance. Really helpful.
Absolutely. And if you are in a situation where paying for private support isn't something that's an option for you, lots and lots of health trusts will have infant feeding teams who employ IBCLCs like me. So you can ask to be referred to see that, to be referred into that service, possibly even while you're expecting your baby as well. Before baby's arrived, ask for a referral, kind of find out the support that's available to you, so what's going to be there once baby's here. It's awful if feeding gets off to a tricky start and you're frantically Googling in the middle of the night, whereas if you've made those connections already, it all just feels a little bit less intimidating.
Yeah, that's so helpful, again, to know that you could ask for those people in advance, or ask when the surgeries are, or just how it works in advance, and that it is available through NHS too.
Yes, absolutely.
Really good. Thank you, Hannah. Yeah. So fifth question, last question, before we do a bit of signposting. This person says, I felt so good in pregnancy, better than I have ever done. But now postnatally, I feel like I've crashed.
Yeah.
I'm finding it so hard with all their feeding needs and keeping them safe when sleeping, when I feel so dysregulated now. And I want to hide away. I just so that I can try and cope again. All those coping techniques I had before, I can't access them now. This is too overwhelming. So I wondered about this. There's some different things. There's about, the hormone changes between pregnancy and postnatal. There's the stuff around sleep and how they feel themselves so dysregulated. It's quite a complex one, this, but I wondered, together we might look at this, because there might be some mental health stuff too. But what do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I think first of all, staying super vigilant about how you are feeling and about how your mental health is post baby is really, really important. And if you do feel particularly low, particularly worried, reaching out for extra support is never ever a bad thing. No one's ever going to be cross with you for doing that. You're not wasting anybody's time. If you're not feeling right, advocate for yourself and get that extra support you need, firstly.
I agree. Most people leave getting mental health support till it's not till it's too late, but much later than they could have done. And I'd agree with that 100%. There are phone lines in Kent, for example. You can text Kent to 85258, and that's the perinatal kind of mental health line. Or you can phone 0800 107 1060, and we're going to put it in the show notes here. But that's our kind of Kent perinatal mental health line. And you can phone them straight away. And as Hannah said, if there's actually an immediate emergency or danger to life, don't phone them. Please phone 999. If you really are worried about your life and how you're feeling about your safety and your baby's safety, don't leave it. Because the quicker you get support, if you are struggling with your mental health after birth, the better for you and for everybody.
Absolutely.
What about some of the other factors that are here in this scenario, Hannah?
I actually a mum again that I supported last week. I went out very early days, and she had had that kind of post-birth crash, so the adrenaline had worn off. You know, the first few nights she had a partner as well, and they were kind of quite happy sitting up, taking shifts, holding the baby all night, because they were just in wonder at this little bundle they'd created. But they were crashing. You know, the sleep deprivation was kicking in, and it's rough. You know, sleep deprivation is a form of torture, and we know that can be a massive trigger for people to have mental health crises, and neurodivergent people as well. You know, being tired, it can make everything more difficult in terms of processing. So what happened last week when I went to this mum was we talked about how to sleep safely with her baby. So again, she was a breastfeeding mum, and we talked about kind of the baby's expectations around sleep, around nature's expectations around sleep, and actually how we could set up a situation where we can maximize rest for mum and baby as much as possible.
That sounds
So
really
there are some lovely resources out there. So Lactation League, which is one of the big breastfeeding charities, and Lullaby Trust give information about how to bed share safely, how to feed safely lying down, and to maximise rest. And interestingly, the studies around breastfeeding and sleep suggest that breastfeeding mums and babies who actually do sleep together get the most sleep out of any feeding dyad, because you can be immediately responsive to the baby in the night, help them latch back on, and then you both go back to sleep. You both benefit from those sleepy hormones that nature gives you. So although you might be having slightly more wake ups throughout the night to kind of, you know, waking up to a baby wriggling around and helping them latch back on, the amount of time you are awake overnight overall is much reduced to somebody who's having to get up, make a bottle, feed the bottle, settle the baby again, get back into bed, wait to be able to fall back asleep. So actually being able to sleep together safely can be an absolute game changer. The key is to be doing it safely and make sure that you have researched how to do it safely. You know how to set up your bed safely. And actually, I always talk to families, even if they say, oh no, I'm not sure bed sharing's for us. I always say to them, well, just read the information, know what it's suggesting, because actually if you get to 2, 3 in the morning, you're at the end of your tether because your baby just won't go down. They just want to be close, which is really, really normal. But you have got another option, and it's far, far safer to be able to know how to set up your bed safely, minimize the risks as much as possible, rather than get to the point where you're just falling asleep on the sofa, which is far, far more risky.
Yeah, that makes sense to be equipped in that way for if it's needed.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. And what this person has described is actually research is starting to show, even research from this year is starting to show, is more and more common, that especially the research was about ADHD people, and that they got, when they were pregnant, that change in hormones actually, for some people, they found that their ADHD kind of symptoms that were difficult to cope with weren't so difficult because of the estrogen increase and the hormone increase. But equally, when those dropped off after birth, the crash was worse than ever. And a lot of people don't realise that in advance who are neurodivergent, because the research only just starting to come out now. And also, when you're pregnant, especially first time, you're not in that parenting bubble to find out information about stuff like that.
No.
So, you know, there's really, as I said, 2026 research showing about how many more people who are neurodivergent will find their mental health really struggles, much more than neurotypical people. And neurodivergent people who will find pregnancy might feel a lot better because of the change in hormones, but then the crash will be worse. So knowing that that might be a situation you're in, and finding out where to get the help quickly afterwards, and also other people in the house just watching out for you, caring for you, knowing, so they know who to call,
being aware
as well.
Absolutely.
Is really important. So I wanted just to finish up, Hannah, how do people get more help? Like, let's do a little bit of signposting to finish up, because we know we haven't covered everything. And we've invited you to take what's helpful, leave the rest. But if you need more help that's right for you, where do we go?
Well, you can reach out to either of us firstly. So we do both Kent and further support as well, and we're always happy to offer that support, or signpost on. there's also brilliant websites. You know, we were talking about reputable sources of information for feeding. There are some brilliant websites, things like the Breastfeeding Network, who've got amazing resource sheets around different medications for breastfeeding. So if you are, you know, if you are having any kind of situation where you might need to take some medication, they can be a really reassuring resource, because they actually list which are kind of more breastfeeding compatible and which maybe aren't. And actually many drugs are okay to take while you're breastfeeding, which is worth knowing. Things like the Association of Breastfeeding Mothers have great website, La Leche League, and they all of them have articles about supporting, you know, if infant feeding if you are neurodivergent, or supporting somebody to breastfeed who is neurodivergent. So
yeah, it's really good they've got those specific things for neurodivergent people too.
Absolutely.
But they do have all sorts of other resources as well, that are really structured in a way that are easier to access as well, which is nice. And some places, like I know La Leche League has a phone line as well. You can actually get support over the phone. And some neurodivergent people can't stand phone calls, and some people really get on with those well, but that's another option. Are there other phone lines or other?
The Breastfeeding Network has a phone line, and I think they operate day and night as well, so there'll always be somebody at the end of the phone to help. So again, like getting those resources, making yourself aware of those resources, is just have a list on your phone so you know who to contact. And I think lots of them, I'll say lots of them, some of them will also have kind of tech support as well. So if a phone call is difficult, you can communicate via email or WhatsApp, if that's easier.
Yeah, that's really good, because some people might prefer that approach.
Yeah.
And if you're watching and you're a healthcare professional, or you're here because you're a doula or a postnatal supporter, and you want to know more about neurodivergent lactation or feeding or infant feeding, you can again get in touch with an IBCLC like Hannah to learn more about that. But also Neurodivergent Birth CIC has a lactation pre-recorded course. It's about 90 minutes, and it's actually by an IBCLC and Victoria, who's the founder of Neurodivergent Birth, and they together teach a bit more about this. You know, over 90 minutes you can get more information. So that might be something if you're a healthcare professional and you'd like to know more. So that would be one place to go to find out more as well. Hannah, any finishing touches? Any just little nuggets you'd like to share to finish off?
I think again, just to, you know, reiterate, we completely recognise there isn't just one type of neurodivergence, so we couldn't possibly cover everything in this live together. But I think the real takeaway is what we both offer is really individualised care that's tailored to that particular dyad. And we could never cover everything in one live, could we? But we will always do we will always meet you where you are. And find the care that's right for you. Yeah.
And you mentioned at the start that both of us are able to offer time. Absolutely. You know, and that's something that can be hard to access elsewhere. So Hannah for infant feeding, myself for that kind of neurodivergent parent support, for the mental health support. And we've, our organisation is a CIC, so we get grants that helps make it more affordable. So we're more affordable than most counsellors or psychotherapists, more affordable than most groups that would be on in the area. If the groups are charging sort of £13-15 a session, we're able to be more affordable than that and have support that's free as well. So get in touch if we can help you. We'll be sharing this live so that you can access it afterwards. And thank you for joining us. And Hannah, thank you so much.
Thank you for asking me. Thanks for asking me.
Really appreciate it. Thank you. See you soon.
Have a nice day. Bye.